Thanks. I don't know how it's going in the Sky Room this morning because this the one drawback of my having to be here is I don't get to be up there, right, in that magnificent space. But you can tell from the level of chatter just now how exciting the start to this morning was. Big thinkers, really interesting ideas. So we're going to bring Julie back up here, who's going to moderate our panel this morning. And then we'll have, I think, Lauren Bond comes after that before lunch, and we'll have Amanda back here, of course, for housekeeping. So Julie, if you'd come back up, please.
Thank you. So working with the three artists I'm about to introduce is something that I'm grateful for continually. Each is a tremendous and rare purveyor of fearlessness, wisdom, intervention, and cool. They constantly push and redefine their work, and through it, they affect awareness and change. I'm going to introduce them all now, and they will give their presentations. And then we will have some questions. And then we'll have a performance by Allison, Warden. So Nicholas Galanin is from Sitka, Alaska, and he received his education in London and New Zealand. He's a multidisciplinary artist and a musician, as you heard last night. He's ridiculously talented. Allison Warden is a Nupiaq from Anchorage and Kaktovik, Alaska. She's a performance artist, a visual artist, and a Twitter poet. And you can find her book in your bookstore of Twitter poems. Her stage name is Akumatu, and she will be performing today with music by WD-40. Da-ka-xeen Mehner is based in Fairbanks, Alaska, also lived and worked in New Mexico, so he knows this landscape well. His work demonstrates that culture is not frozen, it's moving, and it's living. He is Tlingit and hippie, self-described. He's an assistant professor of Native Arts at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, where he also heads the Native Arts Center. So I'd like to welcome Nicholas Galanin.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for having me, Joanne. What an amazing opportunity to be here with everybody. My name's Nicholas Galanin. My Tlingit name's Da-ka-xeen. I'd like to acknowledge the indigenous land that we're on right now, and also that I'm grateful to be here on this place. Yeah, I've been taking this all in. We performed last night. I got albums in the back if you guys want. No, I'm just kidding. No, we did just drop our new record, though, and it's going to be available via Sub Pop and vinyl, so I'm excited about that. But yeah, let's get into these slides and talk a little bit about some of the work that I've been creating. I hit this button here? Okay. As you see in the entryway of the exhibition here is a video on the screen. This video piece is titled Tsuhedi Shugak Titan. In Tlingit, this translates to, we will again open this container of wisdom that's been left in our care. I'd like to think of this philosophy as a representative of our culture's a living, moving culture. We're free, we're sovereign, and we get to command how we navigate through this space. A lot of times, a lot of venues, institutions, historically, anthropology has tried to put the culture homogenously into a box. And as you'll see in Da-ka's and Aku's and everybody's work, we are out here doing these things still. So when you get a chance, you can go watch the video and the audio. In this first part of the video series, David Burney's dancing in non-Tlingit style to a Tlingit song. And then Dan Littlefield's dancing the Raven dance, Tlingit dance, to a non-Tlingit song. So, also on a side note, the house screen in the back there is one of the first projects I worked on as a apprentice. I've trained customarily through our master apprentice schooling, I suppose. So I worked on that with my uncle, Will Burkett, and I still continue to create these customary forms of art as well. So there's a wide spread of work happening there. Things are looking native, natives looking wider. A lot of the experiences as Indigenous artists and Indigenous people were faced with large institutional stereotype through iconographic representation. So Curtis, hired by J.P. Morgan in the past to go document this idea of a dying group of Indigenous people is highly false. We're still here. We're still resilient. We're still surviving. We still have things to offer and how to better your relationship with place. I don't think society has, I rephrase that. I feel like if you don't respect the basic necessities, the water, the land, even the people that first occupied this land, then you've got a lot of work to do. This piece is titled Get Comfortable, honor to my friend O.C. Notes, who was performing with us, named after one of his songs. But the title of the work, Get Comfortable, is this idea of violence and comfort when you don't acknowledge, when you choose not to see, when you are comfortably blind to the history of land. This was actually taken in my community, which leads us to another sign from my community. Your inane perspective is the translation of this piece. Our land is our life, and to me, this reveals two very different relationships to space and place. We have place names. We don't need your terrible names. These are like, I mean, you could have done a little better. But, and our place names carry knowledge, and our place names provide and honor and give insight to real things, real relationships with land, with the sea, with surviving, with the communities. I don't know why you'd want to take that away. Oh, is that it? Okay, I'm missing a slide, but yeah, I'll be around. Goodness, Sheesh, thanks for having me.
Uh-oh. I'm so excited to be here. My name is Allison Warden. I'm an interdisciplinary artist. I work in many different mediums. Most recently, I've seen myself as a traditional artist by the definition of the National Endowment for the Arts. I said, that is me. I am doing that, even in a very, but some people see it as contemporary, so that's a different discussion. Here we go. I was at Jurassic Resident Art Program in, I forgot to time myself. And we created this for one of my music videos, and we filmed a music video there with installation artist Christy Chow. And you'll be seeing it up close here at the end of the presentation. I want to talk about my show at the Anchorage Museum. I was very fortunate to have a full floor, the top floor of the older part of the museum, and it was called Unipkago Siksugavik, the place of the future ancient. Imagine time as a circle with a gap in between, I created an Inupiaq ceremonial house that exists between the synaptic gap of the hyper future and the super ancient. Many of our stories in many indigenous cultures talk about transitioning from back to the old ways of living off the land, that there'll come a time and we're going to be living off the land how our ancestors did. And I keep hearing this thread. And so I was curious about how that transition might occur, and giving space for people to decolonize, rest, reflect. Every day I kept a journal, similar to a whaling captain's log. I was observing the patrons, and so I had a visual journal on the wall here. These are phones where I spoke in Inupiaq. I'm not a fluent speaker, yet I can read it. And because of my acting, I took on different characters and spoke over 8 hours on some phones, contiguous of the language, so that people can hear the language and sit. If they wanted to sit for 8 hours and hear nonstop Inupiaq, they could. And one phone was a singing phone, so I was singing in that one. This is the installation. This is my dance group, the Kisagavigamute Traditional Dancers, that was started as a part of the activation of the space. It's a ceremonial house, and I wanted to, my response to all the things that we're facing in the Arctic, there's so many different levels that we're feeling, is to look at our ceremony and our ceremonial practice. So I created a ceremonial house to create space for ceremony. And part of that space is the bench where you see the ladies dancing. And it's an Inupiaq-style traditional bench that hadn't been created like this in probably 100 years. So it's like, we have to have a dance group to do the traditional bench dances. And that's the young leader. Oh, I'll keep it on that one, it's more interesting. He was 16 when we formed the group. The group is going strong. It's not an art project. It's a traditional dance group, so it's a different thing that I've organized before, but you can see the ladies doing the taliks, or the bench dances. This is an idea of the space. That's the bench I was talking about. We had planet pillows and portals to different universes. Everything glowed in the dark. This is on the backstage area. There were images from the museum's collection. And here is the group. You can see I modified them, put some color. There's me. The holes that you see are part for ceremonial wolf dance, which the group does want to do in 10 years. It will take actual ceremony, but it will take 10 years to prepare for that. But I wanted to at least show what it would look like. Oh, now I'm going to read some Twitter poems. These are, as I read them, these are images from the museum's research center and archives that I modified to project it on one of the walls. We see through the media lies. Notice the ongoing colonization. We recognize one another in crowds, through web noise. Our hearts are awake. Letting go of all your former selves, like watching sparks rise up from a fire. There is no hold in this fast-moving river. You are eternal. When your decolonized mind sees the madness, the disease, take a moment to transform it. Visualize the most healed version. Hold that space. And the Twitter book is in your bookstore. It's hiding. So if you want to, this one is Joanne's copy. But, and I think I'm getting close. There's my nephew. Just some more. One thing is that, my nephew. This is an object from the museum's collection, and we recreated it with a 3D printer. One of the reasons I wanted to use 3D printing is it's a way that we can more study the objects in our hands. It's, as a museum, you have to use gloves, and sometimes you can't even have access to them. This is baling turned into plastic, which is funny. Here's some more objects in the collection. Objects from the museum's collection was present in the space, which means we could have no food. These glow in the dark. Okay, here we go. So this is a whaling suit that has not been made in over 120 years. I had no access to it. There was no way to break it out of the museum case that it was in. So I had to bend myself and contort myself to look at the pattern, and I made a pattern out of a plastic that had a similar kind of weft and feel, so that I could then take that to my community and possibly make one out of the traditional materials. So that's, and it was like the first scuba suit. I love that. It also looks like an astronaut. And this is how the suit was used traditionally. It's a pretty intense picture, but you can see how it would be used traditionally. But we haven't made one in so long, so my hope is to also make one out of the new materials. We had crafts, we had traditional healing. There's my nephew. We had more dancing. We had a fun thing called Talk Show Tuesdays. So I was physically present in the space. Almost every hour the museum was open. I encouraged people to come in. I created this ceremonial drum that glows in the dark. It's very big. And there's how the ceremonial drum is used in our ceremony. Planet pillows. So people were able to take naps and rest, and I encouraged people. We had internet as a space for people. One of my goals is to have everyone learn my Inupiaq language. I'm being inclusive in the teaching of my culture, so I wanted to create a space where everyone felt they could maybe feel what it might feel like in a village. There's the portal to the other dimensions. This was a community. Everybody could put on a zip tie, and it would make a polar bear hide. There's the poem book. It is a piece called Siku Siku. Siku is our word for ice, and now it's used as a word for meth, which, so it was a 2-day performance at a conference similar to this. During a lunch break, people were just walking by, so I'm gonna play a short snippet of the 2 days. On the first day, I played a woman on meth, I think the hardest character I've ever played. And then the second day, I'm the other side of Siku, which is reclaiming the language, relearning the language, and you can feel and sense what the performance felt like.
And that worm didn't like that elder. That elder didn't do good, and that elder was being really bad. Really bad. And he was like trying to become all of everything, and even the inside of a donut. But then that worm knew. And the elder was trying to string around the worm and make the popsicles go into Jell-O. And Jennifer Lopez was like, I don't think so. I don't think I'm gonna make that popsicle go into Jell-O. And I was like, Jennifer Lopez, I want your booty. And she gave it to me, but I gotta grow it out first. I gotta earn it. Because she said that I have to just take a little bit more, and maybe the colonialism will go. But then,
I was speaking only in Inupiaq. A lot of my work, I took care of my 75-year-old mom, and so now a lot of my work has shifted towards the language in an inclusive way. That's my niece. Okay, Kuyanakpag, that's my dance group and my website. And thank you so much for having. If I haven't met you yet, I look forward to meeting you.
So thank you for having me. My name is Da-ka-xeen Mehner. I've got a number of slides, so I'm going to talk fast and go through them. So I grew up in Alaska, both in Fairbanks and in Anchorage. And in Fairbanks, I lived with my hippie father, and we lived in this cabin with no running water, no electricity, no phones, and chopped wood, and heated our house with that. And this was our sauna that we would do our weekly baths with, and my mother's design is painted there on the sauna itself. I grew up, in this environment, and when I was working my way through school, I worked at the North Slope in the oil fields up there in Prudhoe Bay. And so this landscape of Alaska is often thought of as a very romantic place, but I had experiences of the landscape looking like this as I would travel through it, and so this was me, kind of my part of who I was, where I came from, and it led to this group of work that I call my right-of-way. We have this Trans-Alaskan pipeline that runs from the top of Alaska down to Valdez, cutting this mark through the land. But I also use that to navigate through space. The Trans-Alaskan pipeline is about a mile from my house, and we use it to collect berries. So there, pictured in the road, the pipeline is underneath, buried right there, and we actually use that area to move back and forth, and we pick berries, and then I snow machine through there during the winter. So there's another example of the Trans-Alaskan pipeline cutting through the landscape in space there, and some of my work. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the pieces that are up there. Going through some of the archives, actually my wife pointed out the name Da-ka-xeen, right? My name, Da-ka-xeen. Our names are part of the clan Atu, which is the group ownership of objects and things and names, and so I am the caretaker of my name. It was my great uncle's before me, and it'll be someone else's after I'm gone. But I came across this image, and it was Case and Draper, who had a studio in Juneau, Alaska in the 1900s. And I found the image and put it up in my studio and was looking at it for a long time and really thinking about how interesting it is that it has that name, that we are, if not blood relatives, clan relatives. But then going through these archives, I also found him identified as numerous other people, different names used as a prop in their imagery. And so I wanted to reclaim those images in place, set myself in there, and so he's identified as a witch doctor in some of these images, he's identified as a shaman, he's identified as Da-ka-xeen, he's identified as a chief, and so I wanted to, bring into focus that idea that this person that, was used as a prop in this material, and wanted to talk about that a little bit. So I grew up in Anchorage and in Fairbanks, and they're outside of my cultural center, so trace our roots to Klukwan, Alaska, which is just north of Juneau. And every year there's this event called Celebration that brings together dance groups from all over the Northwest Coast and Alaska. It's a 3-day celebration. There's thousands of people that show up, and we go, and we always have family members that say, "Oh, come on, we should dance with us." And I never really knew our songs, never really thought about it much, but always had fun with the family going up there. And pictured up on the top right is my son at his first celebration, and then coming back kind of spontaneously on a fall walk, he started singing and playing. Let's see, how do I, right? and totally spontaneous. This was right after celebration, and it really made me start thinking about possibly my responsibility to culture, but also made me really start thinking about divisions in culture and where they happened, and specifically with my family. And started also thinking about this family story of my grandmother seeing this bar of soap in the grocery store and just saying, I can still taste that soap, that it was washed out of her mouth in school when she was, whenever she spoke Tlingit. And so I created these house fronts that have, this soap that is behind, that blocks off my mouth, creating that barrier in the work. And then also created this set of daggers that are based off of Tlingit warrior objects. So these were not objects that were used for hunting, they were used in warfare. And so it seemed appropriate to use these as a way to think about protection. And on each of these daggers, there are sets that are going up and down. One side has some of the phrases that we still use in our family, like iksehan and I love you, and then the English translation on the other side of the daggers. Ganachish, or no, thank you, and then a few more. And so thinking about this space, part of thinking about songs and responsibility, I kind of built it into my practice to start learning our songs. And so the installation upstairs has our first canoe song, which was the first one I really dedicated myself to learning, and just had these recordings of myself singing and practicing over and over and over again. And so it starts with one drum, very soft, and then repeated over and over again, building into this group of singing drums. So, Ganachish, thank you.
Thanks to each of you. Now you can see why it's such a privilege to work with each of them. First question should be, what's it like to be total rock stars? That's right. So I'm like to start with just a few questions, and then we can open it up a bit. The first is there a necessary dialogue that always has to accompany the performance and exhibition of your work to break up inherited conceptions, to explain indigeneity to an uneducated art and culture audience? And what is that burden like?
I always think it's self-evident to myself, but I realize that it does take translation and interpretation, because what I see that is so evident to me, I realize not everyone sees.
I don't know if it's, and this goes into a lot of different threads of conversation, but it's not always our work to teach you. I mean, all of our elders' information's been homogenized by anthropologists, and we have to pay through institution to access that information. We're not a reserve that's for tapping whenever you feel like you want to learn some new things. But in that same sense, our whole life is committed to sharing and committed to bridging and committed to doing this work. And it is work, it's tiring, it can be, but it's also amazing to see Akumatu's work and the energy that you put into it all. So yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, it's challenging because as an Indigenous artist, you need to take care of your community and make sure that your work is reflective of your people, which we're always cutting edge, so that's easy to, but to just keep them in the mind, and also, also take care of the art community at the same time. I appreciate dialogue around the work. I think it's needed. For my show, I used a lot of explanations and long texts And that seemed to be helpful.
So we're here to talk about the Greater West, and I was curious what the term "the West" means to you.
Well, I guess it's all from perspective, because I always considered the West to be pretty south. But I am enjoying the translation or the thinking of the West as something that's much broader, and hearing people talk about this encompassing nature of like the Pacific Rim. You know, and I do think that it does have that legacy of the wild that those 40 shows try to perpetuate that are on cable television, and I don't have cable, so I never see any of them, but people are always telling me, oh, I love this show about Alaska. I don't know anything about it.
Speaking of Alaska, after your presentation, I really want to go back home. No, no, it was great though to see all of the different versions of Alaska, I suppose. I don't know if West is always inclusive into indigenous histories. I think it's, I immediately go to the idea of a Western, or these spaces where the indigenous community is just to be removed, which is actually historically, look at the sovereign space, or the reservations even, and look how small that version of land is that indigenous communities exist in. Or Alaska, we've got ANCSA, Alaska Native Land Claims Act, that went through in, I don't know, 70s, where we were given corporations to operate in a capitalist form of land management, where resource extraction, et cetera. That's not how I want to use the land. That's not how we've historically existed in this space. So, yeah, anyways.
And then just a note on that, the Lands Claim Settlement Act only was, really was only there because of the Trans-Alaskan Pipeline, because it crossed so many native lands that they had to buy it off before they could put it on.
We became shareholders in a corporation. When I explained that to an indigenous person in South America, I thought he was gonna like explode or something. So the tribes versus the corporations, it set up this interesting dynamic. As far as the West, being Inuit, Inupiaq, people, see me as Eskimo, and so I have, I'm constantly like, no, we're not Eskimos anymore. We're Inuit. So this idea of the West and the Great Frontier, and even in my homelands is Kaktovik, which is in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, which I fought to protect. But I'm a tribal member of my village, so the tribe wants it to be opened. So it's, but the refuge on a whole is romanticized as this place, and usually people aren't included in that place.
Thank you. So no easy, no easy question, but since we're in a museum, and I tend to think about museums a lot, do you have thoughts on what a true inclusion of indigenous curators, artists, and indigeneity of galleries and museum professionals might look like? And what is still needed in terms of the repatriation of minds and bodies and territories and the many kinds of belongings of indigenous people?
I was really, I just want to, yeah. She had some heavy-hitting questions on it. We were prepared for this, but I was thankful that he recognized the indigenous people of the land starting the conference. I thought that was important, and I was appreciative of that. I just want to say that I'll start off there and let you guys.
I think there's already a historical track record of this relationship, and it's not good. it started off with our cultural objects, our items, our atu, and that was part of removing the language. It was part of putting our bones into these spaces, of our ancestors' bones, which are still in museum spaces. It was part of romanticizing how our culture is with authenticity. That goes into things like blood quantum. It goes into how we're able to continue to exist. Is this cutting out? And it's changed slowly, I would say, with some of these exhibitions. It's always about identity. I think I've been in like 6 identity-based exhibitions, but I know who I am.
Me too. I know who I am. I know exactly.
And the government knows who I am. We
And
have
my people know
numbers.
who I am.
We have numbers for being indigenous. We have cards. So yeah, and it's evolving. Our conversations aren't necessarily only held in these linear spaces anymore, where it's like, this is traditional, this is contemporary. I mean, Allison's solo exhibition, incredible. There's a lot of weaving happening in that whole dynamic with history, literally living in a space. I would like to see more indigenous art everywhere, to be honest. I know there was an Art in America issue that just came out as a special. And indigenous art is special, but it should be inclusive in the rest of the conversation, so.
Yeah, I was thinking of Allison's exhibition also, of that being able to activate a space in a museum and reclaim it as a spiritual entity, and it seemed like it was really part of a partnership on how to make that happen. But yeah, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, it's hard. Part of my reason for living in the space, which I didn't have a night at the museum, but I didn't sleep. I wanted to, but was to like, you have our objects, well, here I am, you're stuck with me, you know, like, I'm in your face, you got me too, you know, hello, good morning, you know, I'm here again, you know, just to be like, you want me, here you got, you know, you want, you know, a part of me, well, here's all of me. Here I am in 2017, but I mean, the relationship with the museum with Indigenous people has been, I think they're really, really amazing. But that was just part of the intent of the show, is if the objects are there, then the people need to be there too.
And I also think that artists really need to have that freedom to just to be artists and not have to have the responsibility of being the spokesperson, of being the, I don't know, the interpreter within the space, and.
Yeah, that's hard, because it would be nice to just, well, I think with my siku siku, I was trying to break out and just do something I really wanted to do that wasn't explaining everything.
So it is complex.
Yeah.
But I have a shortcut to all of this.
Okay, yeah.
Acquisitions.
So all of you have drawn upon language, music, visual art, and you've all broken boundaries and strict definitions. So what's next?
Just keep moving forward, I guess, or circular.
As far as other projects going, I'm working on I have the honor of being a lead carver on a 40-foot totem in Juneau. In the 60s, village in Juneau was burnt to the ground to make way for a harbor. And so this is in honor of that community. And then it's also a reminder that this is still Indigenous territory and land, so, yeah.
I think I was so thankful when the other panelists on the first morning, they did so many different kinds of art forms. And I was like, they're like me. Because I found it's hard to define myself, or to, like, and I do this, and I do this, and I do this. So after this conference, I'm like, it's okay to do all those things. But what I'm focusing on now is the collaboration with WD-40 and the album. It's getting closer, finally. I know.
I've been asking.
8 years or something. We have 22 songs, and we sampled my traditional music from Columbia University's archives. They have, so it has some of the traditional music in there. I'm working with Brian Adams, who's an Inupiaq photographer, so we're collaborating on a show. And then the dance group is intense and takes up a lot of my time. So, but we have a 10-year goal of doing a full ceremony. So that's why it takes 10 years, because it's not a show, it's actual ceremony.
So I want to make sure we have time for 2 performances by Allison, but if there are 1 or 2 questions from the audience, we'd be happy to field them.
I'd also like to take this time to let you guys know that you're all getting free cars. And if you look under your seat,
I wonder if you'd talk a little bit about your thoughts about whether the concept of the North, as it is, as it's being shaped, is inclusive in ways that the concept of the West is not.
Well, it's interesting because I think the North is also, we kind of identify as ourselves with other countries at the top, rather than thinking of boundaries within nations. And so I don't know if it's more inclusive or not, but I think this idea of the West that includes Australia definitely goes way beyond those boundaries.
I went to a Arctic conference in Iceland, and I was surprised that there weren't many indigenous Arctic people there. I think I was one of a handful, and it was very business related. It felt like about the geopolitical boundaries and the mapping of the ocean and the planting flags on the bottom of the ocean floor, and a lot of the conversations were focused on that kind of dynamic, and it was challenging for me to be there because my people. I just kept thinking of the people in my village and how they've been there for thousands of years, and it reminds me of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, and there's millions of people who are like, protect the Arctic Refuge, yet the conversation with the actual people who are most impacted by development or not is often not included at all for 30 years. So it's I think we could do better. I know we can do better, but it's interesting with a lot of the meetings that are going on.
So thinking about inclusiveness also, or how it operates. In Fairbanks, it'll get down to 40 below, and at that temperature, we're all in it together. We're all surviving. We're making our way through, and so I feel like we all have that collective feeling that we're all in it.
So I think there's no better way to spend a Saturday morning than with a performance by Akumantu.
Julie, I have one
So,
question from
yeah.
the educators, if I'm able to ask it.
Okay.
It's from the teachers, and it's a really good question. I think you guys will want to hear it. So this is piped down from the Educators Lounge. They said, how can educators help students access other cultures without just peering in or sticking to objects as superficial experiences?
I was speaking with an artist about the lack of cultural center, and especially even this space in this area. And I think having spaces like that are really important for everyone, not just the community, but for everyone. And my resolution to that was maybe Burning Man could try to somehow help fund a cultural center that everybody in the community can access, because there needs to be space like that. We just built one in Alaska, in Juneau. It's not easy. It's not easy to raise that type of funding, but what it provides for everybody is immensely valuable and useful gathering space that engages, I don't know, all across the board, everybody. So.
Every Indigenous artist I know has a workshop in their pocket somewhere where they can show young people how to create something from their culture that it might be an easy project or complex, but I think that's one way to start, is to invite more Indigenous people to work with the youth.
Yeah, I agree. Just, we're all on social media. I think it's fairly easy to find people. I think just ask them, get in contact with artists and talk directly with them.
So, Nicholas?
They can also just follow me on Twitter, at Silver Jackson. Lots of cultural gems dropped daily.
Which is true. So I'd like to thank each of you for sharing your work and yourselves with us, and I think we are all the better for it. So please help me welcome Aku Matu.
This song goes out to my mom and the many moms across Alaska. In the Arctic, we went through rapid colonization. This song is about generational trauma and how it affects us today and what we are doing to transmute and heal it. My mom was born in 1942 in a village called Utkakovik. Then at 2, she was adopted away to Koktovik, where she lives at this day. At the age of 8, my mom got tuberculosis and was sent away to Seattle, WA, with lots of other kids from the villages of AK. She was there for 4 years, so many didn't survive, so many tears. And when she came back to the Ville, everything wasn't okay or chill. Her sister punished in school for speaking her Inupiaq language, it's true. Then at 14, she was sent away to boarding school in SITKAAK. One lifetime, so much pain. One lifetime, memories remain. One lifetime, and now you know the story of one Inupiaq Eskimo. One lifetime, so much shame. One lifetime, memories remain. One lifetime, and now you see the story of me, the story of me. At boarding school, she was punished too. She couldn't even think in her language as a rule. After 4 long years, she graduated way ahead of her peers at 18. She arrived back into the village, things not what they seem. She didn't know how to do what a woman of her age should know how to do. She didn't know how to cut up a seal. She didn't know how to cook a traditional meal. She had to relearn the language too, word by word you feel. So right away, she left KAK to go to FAI to study criminal justice. Hey, worked towards a degree, and then she met my daddy, got pregnant, married, had me, and did not turn out pretty. It was 1972, 2 years with my daddy until he divorced my mommy, moved to Hawaii and rarely ever saw me. Now I ask my mom to translate as I slowly put back the pieces. You resonate, now it's up to you. What are you gonna do? We're counting on you. This is the true story about my mom, shared by so many moms across the world. She went from a sod house to Facebook. Inunik tutilami kirsukituk inusigami ikamagonituk tavra hilichurigen kolektonga atausim inubir inusigami tukanak ituk inusigami ikamagonituk tavra asi tautukin inusigama kolektonga tusarin. My mom worked in the courts, then the church as a secretary. She felt her people's hurts. She became a lay pastor, then went to get her master's of divinity in Dubuque, IUWA, where I was a teen at 18. We moved back to AK, where she preached in Juneau for 8 years, sang gospel songs and clinking and in you back, slowly taking her power back. Then full circle back to Adaptation, where she was associate minister to the dying and the sick. For 8 years serving her community, yet the rules of the presbytery wouldn't let her be. One lifetime, so much pain. One lifetime, memories remain. One lifetime, and now you know the story of one in Quebec Eskimo. One lifetime, so much shame. One lifetime, memories remain. One lifetime, and now you see the story of me, the story of me. So the next time you see a drunk native on the street, I hope you think about me. I hope you think about my mom. And I hope you think about this song. It wasn't that long ago, the military, the colonization, New Bedford Whalers, the whole colonization show. It came and landed so fast. It was like a blast. It's not like they stopped to, still drawing lines in the earth today, telling us what to do. We stand in our tribal sovereignty, still remembering the old stories. We remain super in you back, decolonizing our psyche, bringing old traditions back. So many sad stories, but now today, my mama bore me, and today I bring you the truth and the pain. This is one way we educate our youth. Nunik tutilami kyuksukituk inusigami ikamagonituk tavra asi tautupkin inusigama kolektonga tusarin. Inusigami tukanak ituk inusigami ikamagon ituk tavra asi tautupkin inusigama kolektonga tusarin. Oh, look at me. Where am I? Is this the future? Oh, I recognize you. Ilisimarunga. Ikamarunga. Oh, I remember. I know. I made it. Everything's so bright and hot in the future. Oh, I'm an ancestor from the future. Ancestor from the future. I'm an ancestor from the future. Ancestor from the future. I'm an ancestor, and I got to say I love you in a long time ago kind of way. Oh, you know, I come from the sand of the long ago to remind you to wake up and do what you got to do. You see, everybody at one point was a little baby. Even you. Remember, a tie a Sue. Let's go back in time, each and every one of you listening to this rhyme. Remember, when you landed on the planet as a precious baby, you had a journey to complete, a dream in your heart, so strong it did beat. Yes, you came with a light burning bright inside you, a flame. Do you remember now? Your aim, your calling, your inner heart now. Yes, even you, and especially you too. It's time to wake up and remember why. Why you arrived on the earth, not just to survive, but to give birth to your dreams. You are worth everything. Your dreams are coming true for you and you and you and you and you and you and you. Ayanga na, yanga nanga nanga ne, yanga anga nanga 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 anga nanga ne. Ayanga na, yanga ninga ninga ni, yanga anga nanga anga nanga e. Ayanga na, yanga nanga nanga e, yanga ayanga na, yanga ninga ninga ni, yanga ayanga na, yanga nanga nanga ne, yanga ayanga nanga ninga nanga nanga ayanga nanga nanga I'm an ancestor from the future. Ancestor from the future. I'm an ancestor from the future. Ancestor from the future. I'm an ancestor and I got to say I love you in a long time ago kind of way. Ayanga na, yanga nanga nanga e, yanga nanga nanga na, yanga nanga nanga e. See, oh, ancestor from the future. Ancestor from the future. Ayanga na, yanga nanga nanga e, yanga nanga 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 e. See, you are doing it. You are now in the process of making all your dreams come true. You are doing it. Oh, it is now safe for you to be who you really are. And from now on, everything will get easier and easier, and life flows through you, and you go on your very love-berry journey, okay? Okay, let's get rid of some negativity, okay? Everybody look into the light. Okay, we're gonna let go of some negativity. Are you ready? Okay, I'm ready. 3, 2, 1. Now, I'm an ancestor from the future. Ancestor from the future. I'm an ancestor from the future. Ancestor from the future. I'm an ancestor and I got to say I love you in a long time ago kind of way. I'm an ancestor from the future. Ancestor from the future. I'm an ancestor from the future. Oh, you guys are so precious. All your art you make and curate and direct. Oh, you precious. Remember, your ancestors are with you, okay? All the ancestors say, yay! Yay! Remember and do and be you, okay? Okay. I'll remember all time. Now. Remember. Thank you.